In this session, we'll see about structure of a human heart, and if possible, we'll also see about cardiac cycle in this session itself. Okay, right. We'll begin with this structure of human heart. So before I begin, here a few points. Let's say about the human heart. The human heart develops from the mesoderm, so hence heart is of mesoderm origin. So it develops from the germinal layer mesoderm, so hence heart is of mesoderm origin. And this is, the heart is located in thoracic region, is located in the thoracic region above the diaphragm and in between the lungs, right, slightly towards left side. So it is located in the thoracic region above the diaphragm in between the lungs, and it is slightly tilted towards the left side. So if you see here the diaphragm, and here you will find the lungs. So here is the heart location. So this location, so you will see in front of this there is a sternum, so which is a part of actual skeleton. So this is the left side and this is the right side, and this is the location of heart, and this is the diaphragm. And we know this is a left lung and this is the right lung, and between these two slightly towards the left side. So here I'll mention in a space called mediastinum. So the heart is located in a space called mediastinum that is present below the sternum. So in front here you have sternum, on the back side. So here in front here this is the ventral side, on the back it will be the dorsal side. So that dorsal side, the vertebral column, and on the front side the sternum. So just behind the sternum in a space called mediastinum you will see the presence of heart, right? And we also have seen that the size of the heart, okay, is of a person's closed fist. So size, okay, of a person's closed fist. So how much you close your fist? So this is the fist. So this is the size of your heart approximately. So we say the size of a person, okay, is of that person's closed fist. Now we can even take the weight of the heart. So approximately the weight of the heart is 225 grams in females, and it's around 300 grams in males. So this is, I'm talking about the weight. So the weight approximately is around 225 grams in females and 300 grams in males. So that's a few points on the heart. Now let's see. The heart is covered by a double wall membranous bag. So it's called pericardium. Is covered by a double layered membranous bag, and inside that it is present, the heart is present. So that membranous, double walled membranous bag is what we call it the pericardium. Okay, right. We'll see the pericardium. So as I said, it is double layered. So I'm going to tell you those two layers. One, it's a fibrous pericardium, and another one, serous pericardium. So this fibrous pericardium is the outer layer, whereas the serous pericardium is the inner layer. And this inner layer, that is serous pericardium, it also has two more layers, is divided into two more layers. That is one called the parietal pericardium and another one visceral pericardium. It's called parietal pericardium and visceral pericardium. Okay, we'll see here. So this is the fibrous pericardium. Is the fibrous pericardium, and I told you that the serous pericardium is divided into two more layers. One is called parietal pericardium and another one called the visceral pericardium. So this parietal pericardium will lie in close contact with the fibrous pericardium. So this is the parietal pericardium, and another one is the visceral pericardium. So I'll draw here. This is the visceral pericardium. So I'm mentioning with different shading. So this is visceral pericardium. The visceral pericardium will be in close contact with the layer of the heart, the muscular layer of the heart, that is myocardium, which forms the major portion. This is the myocardium, right? And one more, we have an innermost layer, and this is endocardium. Okay, so here this parietal pericardium is in close contact with the fibrous pericardium. The visceral pericardium is in contact with the myocardium, and you will find a space between the visceral and parietal pericardium. So this we call it a pericardial cavity. And this pericardial cavity is filled with the pericardial fluid. Is filled with the pericardial fluid, and this fluid is around 10 to 15 ml in quantity. So this pericardial fluid actually helps in reducing the friction and also absorbing any external shocks, right? So now here I'll mention the wall of the heart is made up of, is or the wall of the heart has 3 layers. So instead of that, so wall of the heart has 3 layers. Those 3 layers, one is the epicardium. So the first layer is the epicardium. So this visceral pericardium will form that epicardium. I'll write here. So wall of the heart has 3 layers. So the first one is epicardium. So here I told you that this visceral pericardium is the one that forms the epicardium. The next layer is the muscular layer. The cardiac tissue is the one that forms this myocardium. The second layer is myocardium. So this is the middle layer, whereas epicardium is the outer layer, the myocardium is the middle layer, and the third one we have is this endocardium, that is the inner layer. So this all 3 together will form the wall of the heart. Right. So here one more point. So endocardium is a endothelial layer. So this is how you see the wall of the heart. So as I mentioned, pericardium has 2 layers, that is fibrous and serous pericardium. The serous pericardium, which you divide into 2 layers, the parietal and visceral. Visceral will be in close contact with the myocardium, whereas the parietal will be in contact with the fibrous pericardium. You will find the gap between these two, and it is filled with the pericardial fluid. Right. So the next point, the heart is more or less triangular in shape. And you will see it has a pointed end. So this pointed end is what we call it apex, and this is towards the posterior side, and the opposite one is broad. So this is what we call it the base. So this is broad and it is the base, and it is present towards anterior side. So here the heart is more or less triangular in shape. So this pointed end will be towards the posterior side, and we call it the apex, and the base will be broad and it is present towards the anterior side. So now let us see the chambers and inside the heart. So we know here all mammals have 4-chambered heart. In human beings also the same. Human heart has 4 chambers. So out of this there are 2 auricles or atria. Atria plural word, atrium singular, and again 2 ventricles. So 2 auricles and 2 ventricles are present. Right. So now we'll see these auricles, they have thin walls, whereas ventricles have thick walls. So let's see its structure. I'm just roughly drawing here. So two auricles and right. So this is the left auricle and this side is the right auricle and this is the right ventricle and here is the left ventricle. So total 4 chambers, the right and left atria and the right and left ventricles. So here separating these two auricles, you have one septum, that is wall, and this wall is called interauricular septum. In the similar way, separating two ventricles, also we have one septum, it's called interventricular septum. And again, in the similar way, separating the auricles and ventricles, we have auriculoventricular septum. So here I'll take, so this is auriculoventricular septum. The auriculoventricular septum is present between the auricles and ventricles, right? So if I draw in this way, so you find here, so this one is interauricular septum, okay, and this one is interventricular septum, and this one which is transferred separating the auricles and ventricles is the auriculoventricular septum. So auriculoventricular septum, okay, so this is what, so here you may not see it clearly, so I have drawn here, okay. Now right on this interauricular septum, you may find a small depression, and this is what we call it fossa ovalis. In the embryonic stages, right, this is actually a hole, right, and that hole is what we call it foramen ovale, that I'll mention here. So during fetal stage, interauricular septum has a hole, and that is called foramen ovale. So this foramen ovale actually helps in directly passing the blood, whatever that reaches into the right auricle, into the left auricle. So that is bypassing the blood. So if not, the blood will reach into the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, the blood passes to the lungs. As lungs are not functional in the embryonic stages, what happens is here there will be actually a hole, right? The blood which reaches this right auricle will directly pass into the left auricle, so without passing into the right ventricle and then to the lungs. As I told, the lungs are not functional in the embryonic stages, okay, right? And right, at the birth, okay, or immediately after the birth, here it gets completely closed, and that remains for the lifetime as a depression on this interauricular septum, and that we call it fossa ovalis. Okay, I'll write fossa ovalis. So in certain conditions, if this is not closed, that is foramen ovale is not closed, then it results in the formation of the hole in the heart. So that's what we call hole in the heart. So here, when this is not closed, the foramen ovale is not closed, then it results in a condition called hole in the heart, right? So here this right auricle is larger when compared with the left auricle, and coming here the left ventricle is larger when compared with the right ventricle. Okay, so right auricle is larger than the left auricle, whereas the left ventricle is larger than the right ventricle. Now, connecting the right auricle with the right ventricle, we have an opening, and this is what we call right auriculoventricular aperture. In the similar way, on this side also we have an opening that connects the left auricle with the left ventricle, and that is called the left auriculoventricular aperture. And I'll mention here, so this is the left auriculoventricular aperture, is the auriculoventricular aperture. Now here the right auriculoventricular aperture is guarded by tricuspid valve, and on the left side this left auriculoventricular aperture is guarded by bicuspid valve. So this bicuspid valve is also called the mitral valve. So I'll just mention here bicuspid, or also called the mitral valve. Both are same. So either mitral valve or bicuspid valve. So that will be guarding the left auriculoventricular aperture. So the function of this tricuspid and bicuspid valve both will help in preventing the flow of blood back into the auricles. So once the blood comes to the ventricles, the contraction of the ventricles may push back the blood back into the auricles. To prevent it, these valves are present. Okay, so that is a tricuspid valve, okay, in the right auriculoventricular aperture guarding this, and on this side it will be the bicuspid valve. Here in the ventricles, so on the inner side you will find small irregular muscular columns. So you may find small irregular muscular columns, and these irregular muscular columns are called trabeculae carneae. So these are called, right, I will remove some of this. So these foldings, irregular, okay, muscular columns are called trabeculae carneae, right? You can also call columnae carneae, and some of these are much bigger and longer, and those are called the papillary muscles. So you will find in both the ventricles, right? So these are called papillary muscles, and extending from these papillary muscles we find okay, thin strings that directly attach to these, right, valves. So you can see here, so they are attaching to the valves, right? And these thin strings are called actually the heart strings or the chordae tendineae. They are called the chordae tendineae or the heart strings. And right here, heart strings or the chordae tendineae, right? So these chordae tendineae will help to keep these valves in position so that they won't, okay, flip around, and keep in position and help in directing the blood only in one direction by these valves. Right, so this is all about the internal structure. Now we'll see the blood vessels entering and coming out of the heart. So here I have drawn the diagram. So we'll see, arising from this left ventricle we have is the aorta, right? So this aorta takes a turn and right, it goes on to the dorsal side. So what you are seeing is the ventral side. So it, okay, takes a turn onto the back, okay, that is onto the dorsal side. That is the reason why it is also called the dorsal aorta. Is the biggest blood vessel in the body, right? And then arising from the right ventricle, so from here we have another blood vessel, and this is the pulmonary artery. So here I'm showing, so that divides into, right, left and right side pulmonary arteries that will be supplied to both the lungs. So here you can see this is the dorsal aorta, and this one is I'll mention this side. So pulmonary artery. So this is the dorsal aorta. Okay, so here these both, you know what you say, the dorsal aorta and pulmonary artery are guarded by valves. They are guarded by valves, and these are called the semilunar valves. So here and in this case we find semilunar valves. The semilunar valves will guard both the pulmonary artery as well as the dorsal aorta. So here the dorsal aorta arises from the left ventricle, whereas the pulmonary artery arises from the right ventricle. Now, opening into the right atrium, we have is the main veins. Okay, so here is the opening, and one more opening you will find. Okay, right, and this is inferior vena cava, and this is the superior vena cava. So here opening into the right atrium, so you will find, I will draw here. Okay, and this so that would be better. Okay, so this is the superior vena cava and this is the inferior vena cava, and these are the openings into the right atrium. Openings into the right. Okay, so this is opening of superior vena cava, and this is the opening of inferior vena cava. And this superior vena cava is formed by two precaval veins. Two precaval veins, whereas the inferior vena cava is one postcaval vein. One postcaval vein. So it's a two precaval veins. They form into this superior vena cava. Okay, they join to form this superior vena cava, whereas inferior vena cava is one postcaval vein. And one more opening you will see in the right atrium. So that is the opening of a coronary sinus. Opening of coronary sinus. So that is a blood vessel. The coronary sinus is a blood vessel that brings the blood from the wall of the heart. Okay, that is deoxygenated blood, and that deoxygenated blood will be passing into this right atrium through this coronary sinus, whereas this inferior vena cava will bring the deoxygenated blood from lower parts of the body, whereas this superior vena cava will bring from the upper parts of the body, that I will mention here. So I just mentioned superior vena cava. Okay, so it will pass deoxygenated blood into the right atrium from head, neck and arms. So which means I can also say it collects the blood from the head, neck and arms. And coming to this inferior vena cava, It collects blood from middle and lower parts of the body. So it collects blood from middle and lower parts of the body, right? So this is a function of superior vena cava. It collects the deoxygenated blood from head, neck and hands, and inferior vena cava will collect the deoxygenated blood from middle and lower parts of the body, and they pass this blood into the right atrium. So into the right atrium you will see three openings. Now here the superior vena cava is not guarded by any valve, whereas this inferior vena cava is guarded by one valve. So that is, so at the junction where the inferior vena cava opens into the right atrium, it is guarded by Eustachian valve. So we find Eustachian valve, so guarding the inferior vena cava into the right atrium. It helps in preventing the backflow of the blood. Then at the same way, the coronary sinus, the opening of coronary sinus is also guarded by one valve, and that is called the valve of Thebesius. I'll just write here opening of coronary sinus is guarded by valve of Thebesius. Is guarded by valve of Thebesius. Okay, so whereas this inferior vena cava is guarded by Eustachian valve. Okay, so you find a valve here, and at the same time opening of coronary sinus also has a valve, and that is called valve of Thebesius. So out of these three, the superior vena cava is the only one that is not guarded by a valve, whereas these two are guarded by the valves. Then coming to the left atrium, in the left atrium you will find total 4 openings. So these 4 openings are from the pulmonary vein. So all these are opening of pulmonary veins, right? So we will see like this. So this is the pulmonary vein. So in the left atrium you will see total 4 openings, and those are all the openings of pulmonary veins. Okay, right. So here in the right atrium, so 3. So in this case, these pulmonary veins are also not guarded by any valves. Next, during embryonic stages, this pulmonary artery and the aorta both are actually linked by a short blood vessel, and this is called Ductus Arteriosus. Is called Ductus Arteriosus, which it also has another name called Ductus Botali, also called Ductus Botali. Sorry, mention the name of the person, right? Ductus Arteriosus or Ductus Botali. In the embryonic conditions you will see this. Okay, so that's, I'll mention, present in fetal stage. So here after the birth, okay, what happens, this ductus arteriosus will be completely gets degenerated, and it remains as ligamentum arteriosum. So once, okay, this the function. So here again the function is just like which I have told foramen ovale, to bypass the blood. As I told, in the embryonic conditions, the lungs are not functional. So as a result, okay, there is no need of blood to be supplied to the lungs. So hence what happens is we need to bypass the blood. So here also, if any chance the blood enters into the pulmonary artery, that blood will pass into the aorta directly instead of going to the lungs. Now, okay, so this will get degenerated, okay, after the birth, and that remains as ligamentum arteriosum. Okay, I'll mention here. So this ductus arteriosus will become ligamentum arteriosum. It becomes ligamentum arteriosum. Okay, so this is about okay, the different blood vessels that come and join the heart and arising from the heart. Here I'll also mention, okay, what these blood vessels are. So these are the blood vessels, okay, that will supply blood mainly to the head, neck, okay, and shoulders. We'll see. Here, as I have mentioned, so this is the pulmonary artery, which will divide into, okay, the right pulmonary artery and the left pulmonary artery. I'll just remove these. So I'll mention here. So this is the right pulmonary artery, and this is the left pulmonary artery. Okay, and here also I'll mention so this is the brachiocephalic artery. Brachiocephalic artery. And the second one is the left common carotid artery. Left common carotid artery. Whereas another one is the left subclavian artery. Right. So find out to which parts this brachiocephalic artery supplies blood, and so all these are the one that will be supplying the oxygenated blood to different parts of the head, neck, shoulder, I mean the upper parts of the body, right? So this is the brachiocephalic artery, this one is common carotid artery, and this one is the left subclavian artery. This I'll end up here. So in the next session we'll see some more points on this heart, and then we'll also see about the cardiac cycle. Thank you.